You lose half your games not because of your team or your matchup, but because of the mistakes you make in every game. Today I'll share 5 rules for each lane. 5 rules you should always keep in mind and never forget. Subscribe to improve your game and stay up to date with the current meta. Well, let's start with roaming. Don't stick to gold or one lane. Let's start with the base, which is most common at lower ranks because sticking to one lane is bad. But firstly, it's ineffective. Literally all allied lanes suffer because of this roaming decision. It's easier for enemies to enter your jungle, it's easier for enemies to gank your experience, and they can easily outplay your mid laner. Bull. In short, it's just plain ineffective. Secondly, your enemies aren't stupid. The enemy Golder isn't stupid. He sees that he's facing 2 players, which means he won't rush into the enemy lane and will simply stay carefully under the tower. This means that taking a single lane is incredibly ineffective if the enemy team has at least 5 IQs between them. Playing with a mid laner and a jungler. Most often, a roamer can't do anything alone, so he needs to play with someone. Most often, this is a mid laner. The third player is the jungler. 95% of your games should look like this. You go mid with a mage, clear the lane, and then look for action. Either you go for a gank, or you go into the enemy jungle, or you go to the objective, and so on at Niawan. Also, before you go anywhere, it's very important to check the allied jungle, or at least you should be sure that everything is calm there, because if the enemies start choking the jungler, it will be an incredibly big problem for you. Draft. Few people know, but roamer is a very important position in the draft. Sometimes she can even compete with the jungle in this regard. But I don't want to talk about that here, but a balance in it. Almost all classes can play the roamer position. Therefore, if the game is lacking something, or someone needs countering, a roamer can fill that need. For example, in tanking, crowd control, healing, initiation, and so on. Of course, this can be in other positions too, but roamer has more maneuverability in this regard. Therefore, if possible, take the hero as one of the last in the draft. Enemy exposure. When playing as a roamer, it's very important to expose the enemy position. Firstly, this is our farm. Secondly, and most importantly, it greatly helps our allies. We can notice how an enemy player has moved towards a certain lane, which means our exposure will give information to an ally, if they are of course watching the map. Having received this information, they will begin to play more passively and carefully. There are no wards in the game, so their work is primarily performed by the roamer. Having 60+ participation in fights is a somewhat general rule that includes many other rules. But here, I simply want to say that when playing as a roamer, you should almost always be the one with the most participation in fights. That is, your total kills and assists should be higher than all your allies, This is because the roamer should almost always be present in fights. Without them, they rarely happen. And if your stats are below 60%, or even below 50%, this usually indicates that your impact is extremely small. We're done from the roaming position. Let's move on to the next lane. This is our gold. Careful play. The first thing you should know when playing gold is that it's very easy to lose this lane. Just take a few extra hits from the enemy adversary and you're done. Because of this, you either have to hide under the tower, losing creeps, or risk it, facing a high chance of death. Playing carefully is especially important if you're not a very experienced player and don't yet know what the enemy hero can do. Conversely, playing aggressively in one-on-ones is possible when you know both your own and the enemy hero. Speaking about lane play in general, you'll often have to play carefully because of potential ganks. Correct lane positioning. I would consider this a sub-point of the first point, but I still want to highlight it separately. There's a position on gold that will always keep you in seeding and will allow you to avoid ganks, namely this position. If you stand here, you'll have complete control over everything. This means you can calmly farm creeps and control the enemy marksman. And the most important thing, of course, is controlling a potential gank. If the enemies are close, it will immediately become noticeable and we can safely retreat under the tower. If we can't hold these bushes, that is, when they're mirrored to us, then we try to occupy these 2 bushes, sacrificing ourselves for the tower. Many people have this problem, and it's not just newbies, but also at higher ranks. Yes, the problem is that many, seeing their tower being pushed, try to defend it with all their might. Why is defending the tower to the end a mistake? Because your life is much more valuable, especially at the start. There's times when you simply need to retreat back to the T2 tower. The tower will be pushed anyway, so there's no point in risking yourself. Exiting the lane at the right time. Another mistake that happens regularly is when the marksman doesn't understand that it's time to stop AFKing in one lane and start playing with the team. For example, you outplayed your opponent in the lane and had outfarmed them by 2,000-3,000. Instead of effectively using your power to help your team and increase your chances in the match, you're just making things worse. Ici, if the game is going well, try to play with your team at least when the first Lord spawns. Lords are often dealt primarily by the ADC. Their primary damage output is not. Besides the Lord, the Marksman also provides primary damage output in the late game. Here, I want to emphasize that you need to keep this in mind, always remember it, keep an eye on the timer and be prepared for the fact that an assassin or initiator in disguise can appear at any moment, okay? Everyone wants to know your location and everyone wants to focus you. Therefore, try to stay as close to your team as possible, don't go alone. Risky moves should only be made with the proper knowledge, If you get killed in light mode, your team will most likely lack damage, making it easier to spot the rest of your allies. Don't know where to replenish diamonds in our favorite game, and you want to do it quickly? I know a site that will help you solve this problem, Donatov.net. This website is an official Mobile Legends partner where you can top up your diamonds or other in-game currency. Any amount of diamonds at the best prices. Top events and collaborations are frequently held in the game, meaning you can purchase diamonds to get the best and rarest skins in just a couple of clicks. See semester. Be sure to follow the link in the description or pinned comment, then select the number of diamonds you need. Next, enter your ID and server, which are located under your avatar in your profile. Diamonds will arrive literally a few seconds after topping up. When you donate through my link, you receive a bonus in the form of a discount. Donatov.net, and most importantly, safe. Link in the description. So next up is our mid lane. We're support. The mid lane is the most popular lane in the game. Those who start playing it mistakenly think it's the main lane in terms of damage. Mages have a lot of it, of course, but they can rarely kill anyone alone. Only a few mages are capable of this in the early and mid game. My point is that you shouldn't try to take someone down alone. More often than not, you should play with someone and deal damage with them. A mage is like a second roamer, but with damage. With a mage, we deal damage, provide control, and play carefully. Positioning. Now more about careful play. Unlike other classes, mages can be called the most dependent class. Firstly, as I said earlier, they are rarely capable of killing anyone alone. Secondly, most of them are not mobile, which means their survivability tends to 0. This means that when playing a mage, our positioning must be extremely careful. Only a few mages can strictly adhere to this rule, and if you look at it this way, most of these mages are always in the meta for Juxin or Valentina, Juxin, whose ultimate is a dash and, if possible, a flash, and Valentina, who has 2 dashes. Mobility is the most important quality for a mid laner. Playing with a roamer and a jungler. Ideally, the game should look like this. You quickly clear a pack of creeps on mid with the roamer and immediately go for a gank with the jungler joining in. But if we're playing solo, then naturally the ideal scenario will be extremely rare. So all we can do is try to strive for this scenario. If the roamer isn't with us, go to the lane where he is currently after clearing the lane. If you have a strong jungler, try to play with him. Help him. Check his jungle. Help on objectives. The mid laner may not be the main player on objectives, but he's still important. I decided to mention this here because I often notice mages forgetting about helping on the turtle, instead lingering on the gank or farming while the action on the turtle is already in full swing. If the mid laner gets a good position on the objective, this alone can make an incredible impact. They can zone out, provide control, or even knock off at the enemy jungler's HP, after which they will only have to retreat. Map info. We occupy the center of the map, which means we see a lot of enemy movement. Our job is to warn our allies to tell them that the enemy mid laner or roamer hasn't been seen for a while, hasn't it? And also, if we see which direction they're heading, we should also warn them in advance. Carefully watch where the enemy mid laner moves after clearing the lane. This will give a lot of information. Okay, moving on. Experience lane. Meta dance. The first thing you need to know when playing on XP is the current meta lanes. While other lanes offer a variety of choices, it's hard to say what you should pick on XP. Everything is pretty clear. The most important thing is that your hero is tanky. Why is this so important? Because all meta warriors are not only tanky, but also have damage. But what's the point of picking a squishy damage dealing hero if you can pick a tanky damage dealing one? Basically, all meta warriors are versatile, capable of almost everything, not just defense and damage. We're the front line, even though we most often play a warrior